Okay.
Hey guys, welcome to Know Something. இன்னைக்கு நம்ம வந்து ஒரு மைக்ரோசாஃப்ட் இன்டர்வியூல செலக்ட் ஆன ஒரு கேண்டிடேட்டை பத்தி நம்ம இன்டர்வியூ எடுக்க போறோம். ஹி இஸ் மை அலும்னி. அவர் வந்து ஐஐடி மெட்ராஸ்ல படிச்சிட்டு இருக்காரு, மைக்ரோசாஃப்ட்ல செலக்ட் ஆயிருக்காரு. ஸோ லாஸ்ட் டைம் ஒரு கூகுள் எம்ப்ளாயோட இன்டர்வியூ நான் போட்டிருந்தேன் என்னோட யூடியூப் சேனல்ல. இந்த தடவை அந்த ரெஸ்பான்ஸ் பார்த்துட்டு ஐ லவ் ட்ரிச்சி சேனல் கூட பார்ட்னர் பண்ணி இந்த லைவ் இன்டர்வியூ வந்து ப்ராட்காஸ்ட் பண்றோம். ஸோ உங்களுக்கு இந்த இன்டர்வியூ பிடிக்கும்னு நினைக்கிறேன். உங்களுக்கு இந்த வீடியோ பாருங்க. உங்களுக்கு ஏதாவது சஜஷன் கமெண்ட்ஸ் ஏதாவது இருந்துச்சுன்னா கமெண்ட்ல மென்ஷன் பண்ணுங்க. ஸோ அந்த கேண்டிடேட்க்கு ராகவுக்கு வந்து தமிழ் தெரியாது. ஸோ அதனால இந்த மொத்த இன்டர்வியூமே வந்து இங்கிலீஷ்ல தான் இருக்கும். ஸோ யா ப்ளீஸ் வாட்ச் இட். ஹே ராகவ், on behalf of I Love Trichy and on behalf of Know Something, I welcome you. Though you are in a very tight schedule, I really welcome you and I say my thanks on behalf of the viewers. So let's start. Why don't you give a quick intro about you to the people?
Absolutely. Hi Vinod. Hi everyone. My name is Raghav. I am a fourth year undergraduate student in the Department of Computer Science at IIT Madras. I am a localite of Chandigarh, Punjab. Yeah, all across the nation from Madras. So yeah, I have a passion. I love playing sports and all, but my main passion is algorithms and computer science, the department I am pursuing. So thank you, Vinod, for having me here today. I hope you'll be able to actually inspire someone to take up this.
Fantastic. Thanks, Raghav. So, what is the reason behind you to choose engineering after you finish your school, and why particularly IIT Madras, and why computer science, or why particularly that stream and that college?
Absolutely. So for me, honestly, in a nutshell, maths was my first love. So basically, I've always wanted to pursue maths further and see what goes into. But during my 11th and 12th, I realized that I wasn't much into research. So the closest field to that, I believe, was either computer science or electrical. As some of you might know that actually in many of the foreign universities in the US, electrical and computer science are actually the similar department, same department. They have the EE and CS department. But in India, most of the colleges have electrical and computer science separated, with the majority of theoretical part of maths happening in computer science. So that's why my focus was trying to get into the best college in computer science. But when it came to the colleges and came to the JEE rank, the options I had were limited. In the top 5 IITs were IIT Madras and then IIT Kharagpur. I was not able to get in into Bombay, Delhi, or Kanpur. I missed them by a couple of ranks. So in there, I realized after doing a lot of survey that the professors at IIT Madras had way more laurels, had more experience than professors at IIT Kharagpur. For example, 80% of the professors, approximately, not a fixed number, at IIT Kharagpur had done their post-graduation at one level at the master's in India itself, in Bengal itself. So I felt that kind of regionalism was not conducive to the environment of collaboration. So I thought going to a better geographical location and a better college like IIT Madras would be. So that's why I went for IIT Madras, and CEC I already wanted to go to.
Awesome. So as you said, you are doing a dual degree, right? As an MTech program as well. So what is your goal after finishing that? I believe you are in your final semester now, final year. So what is your goal and what is your ambition? Can you please tell me on that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as I said, I just love computer science and mathematics. So in the short run, my goal in the next 3 to 5 years is to learn as much as possible. As a part of my master's, which I'm going to start now, I'm going to explore a lot of fields like deep learning, computer vision, and possibly even cybersecurity and other things. But as a part of my employment, which I want to join later, I want to explore even more fields like software engineering and how that goes. So in the 3 to 5 years, I want to learn more things. But in the long run, my aim is to be able to give back to the site, to be able to create impact. So in the next 3 to 5 years, I might be able to get an idea of which skills I'm able to create impact using. And then later, I might be able to use them as my own venture or as part of a project in another company, but somehow to be able to create impact later in the long run.
That's really awesome. So let's come to the business. So you appeared for a Microsoft interview, cleared it, you did your internship, and you have the offer now. So where it all started? Is Microsoft is your first interview, or did you give any mock interviews for different companies?
So actually, Microsoft was my first in-person interview related to employment. As a part of my couple of clubs in college, I had gone through some interview process before, but that was mostly regarding, as I said, different clubs in college or as part of some science programs in 11th and 12th, like the KVPY program. But I had never actually given an in-person interview for an employment, like internship or full-time employment. I had given an interview for virtual interviews for internship before, but this was the first in-person interview. So Microsoft comes on campus for us at IIT Madras, like they do in a lot of colleges all across India and the world. So that is my first interview I had in this was with Microsoft.
That's really great, Raghav. So with respect to projects, so we all learn. So when it comes to practical, what we learn, we need to implement that, right? So I believe you have done a couple of projects in internships as well. So how those, can you explain what project you have done so far and how that projects were influential when go for an interview like Microsoft or any other tier one companies? Can you say explain on that?
Absolutely. I believe to be able to delve into and get a Microsoft interview and then final internship, the thing that helped me most were both my projects as well as my curriculum. As both are the part of my curriculum and the project, I was able to understand and delve into many things of computer science. Like, for example, in our curriculum, we had courses starting from hardware of computer science to of the computers, how to make a chip, to how to code that chip, and then finally how to make an operating system. This is something you will never be expected to do in a final internship because you're going to be there just for 2 to 3 months. But then how much do you know about the curriculum at the time of the interview shows that how much you can quickly adapt, how much you can more learn, and how easily you can contribute during that time. So as a part of my projects, I had actually worked in different fields like deep learning, computer vision. I had done a research intern before because I was trying to explore that field. So I had worked in there. But the more projects I did, I realized that it boils down to actually being able to implement something or not. If we can actually get down to it and code it up. So actually doing projects online on Kaggle for data science, or doing an open source internship like GSOC, Google Summer of Code, or for any other similar kind of platforms really helps the person to understand what the industry wants from you. So even if you try and see the kind of problems they ask at the interview, it's trying to see, they try to judge how fast you can quickly learn the new thing, or you can relate it to the things you've learned before and explain it to them or try to implement that. That is what I think they look for.
That's really great. That's really great, Raghav. So when you go for a Microsoft, the bread and butter is coding, the knowledge you have in computer science. So where it all started. So what are the basic languages you know, and how did you start working on that? At what age or at which year of your college you started really practicing on coding?
Absolutely. So actually, I would say I started in my first year itself. Actually, to be honest, in our first year, we have a course for Introduction to Programming. So alongside that, I learned C initially in that course. But then you quickly realize that in that course, you need a lot of practice to be able to actually do something with that language. Because coding is not just clearing a course; it's being able to create a chatbot. It's being able to create a mobile application or something. So quickly, I shifted from C to C++ because of a better standard template library. Because C++ was more intuitive to me. I was able to relate to that better. So I shifted to that. But then I kept on exploring more and more. And as I delved into more places, I started learning Python. But the thing about programming is that slowly you realize that you have to be language agnostic. It is, which means that you should know a couple of frameworks. You should know the concepts of computer science, but knowing a particular language is not very important. You should know at least one or two languages. That is the very basic minimum required, because otherwise you don't know what the languages want from you. But then once you know a particular language and you know what is required from a language, the idea of a computer language, then if you want to learn a new language, it becomes very easy for you, which is something which they'll look for. Because they don't, like, if they come to hire you for 1 year later, they don't know what project you're going to have. I mean, they're going to assign you a project very late. So they should be able to look at you and see that, okay, if I give that person a new language, a new framework, he she will be able to learn something and implement in 2 months itself. So trying out multiple languages and trying to build something, even if you feel that language is probably not very helpful, it is helpful in the long run. It helps you learn new things faster.
That's really interesting. So being you are in a premier institution, you are in IIT, right? So every year MS Microsoft will come for a recruitment. So at what year, at which year you decided to sit for Microsoft? Like how many years or how many months you did take to appear for MS?
Uh, to be honest, my preparation was never directly targeted towards MS, actually. I mean, I did target MS as a specific company I wanted just before they came on campus, a month before I started preparing. But other than that, I did and overall placement preparation. In the sense that placement preparation, I started like a couple of months back, not very diligently, but you start revising first of all the concepts you've already learned in the courses and across the projects. So that basically, which is knowing yourself part. You should know what you already know and what are the areas you need to improve on. Then you go to websites like Geeks for Geeks, LeetCode, and InterviewBit to work on those areas and to see what actually companies want from you in those particular areas. Then after you think you have a basic strength, then and this is my journey after basic strength, I went to company-wise tags. Like I went to InterviewBit and I went to LeetCode and I took the problems tagged Microsoft, took the problems tagged Google. So I solved a lot of those problems. I mean, it's not that I solved only Microsoft problems. I solved problems for a lot of companies, but it just so happened that that is a company I ended up cracking.
So when you say you focused on Microsoft problems and you faced on Google problems, right? So can you explain more on that so that the viewers or current engineering students could focus on those problems? So where did you get that problems? Do you have any particular community or particular website did you get that problems?
Absolutely. Sure. So generally, so from my experience and from the advice I've got from my seniors, the two major websites which everyone uses to be able to access these problems is InterviewBit and LeetCode. So InterviewBit and LeetCode give an idea of industry-friendly problems, like what they want, what they expect you from the interviews. And to be honest, a lot of times in most of the companies, especially except Google, in most of the companies, questions tend to repeat after some time. So, I mean, this is a hack which a lot of people don't know. So if you solve a lot of questions, there is a good chance you'll find a very similar question in the final test or in the interview that will boost your confidence like anything. So, yeah.
That completely makes sense, Raghav. So, if you don't mind, so can you give a sort like what are the possible questions you would expect from MS interview? May not be the
Absolutely.
questions, but approach.
Absolutely. Yeah, actually, as I said, I actually don't remember the exact questions, but I'll tell you generally what they look for. So traditionally, Microsoft looks for two major fields. The first field is linked lists and slash stacks, and the second is binary trees. So most of the questions me and my peers got in their interviews and in the test of Microsoft were related to linked lists and trees. Some very minimum number of questions were from stacks also. So mostly trees and linked lists. So knowing these two things, knowing their implementations and knowing their corner cases in and out properly is a essential. Like linked list will definitely they'll ask you a lot of questions, and binary tree and in linked list they'll expect you to know everything very fast because it's a basic extension of the concept of array. But in tree they might give you some time to think. But then again, if you have done a lot of questions beforehand on these two topics, you'll be very fast about it, and you'll be able to actually relate to the interviewer, and your interview will go better if you do these 2-3 topics.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So, Raghav, starting from the written test to the HR interview, so generally, how many rounds you would face and how many days it would take? Can you share
Oh
this
yeah.
experience?
Surely. I think the days thing varies from college to college. But for us, it was that during the weekdays, we had for Microsoft, we had two sets of, placement tests, the tests for the interview. And for interviews, we had 3 rounds. So the first test is basically an online test that you will sit in some classroom or in some room designated by the college or the company. In that, you'll have a 1.5 or 2 hour long test in which you'll have 3 to 4 questions. Mostly you'll have 3 questions. On the basis of that, they'll shortlist some number of students. Now, after the shortlisting, they'll have a written test. So the written test is generally easier than the online test, and it is just the precursor to the interview. So let's just say our online test happens on Tuesday, and the interview is on Saturday. Then the written test will happen on Friday evening. So Friday evening, all the Microsoft panelists, everyone will sit in a room. They will be invigilating you properly, and you'll be writing a written test. So that written test will be a bit of debugging. They're just the written test is an extension of the interview in some sense. So the next day, they might filter out some students from that test. And so now on Saturday, you'll have the interviews. So the interviews generally can be 4 rounds also, but more often than not, it's 3 rounds. So first 2 rounds are completely technical. Every round generally has 4 phases. The first 2 phases are you introducing yourself and the other person introducing themselves. The third phase is asking the actual questions, like the programming questions, like how to implement a linked list or how to traverse it, some fun question about it. And the fourth part is when they actually give you time to ask some question to themselves. And that is very critical. Alongside obviously solving programs, should be able to see what kind of questions you want to ask them. So prepare at least two things before you go. That first, that how will you introduce yourself? Like, what's your introduction? Summarize yourself in 5 or 6 lines. And then what kind of questions do you think you should ask the interviewer? Like what their team is, what their project is, or, sir, what should I expect from the internship? Something like that. Something which shows that you actually care about this internship and you want to learn, want to ask more from them. So this thing was common across the first 2 rounds. And the third round, it was a higher level manager. Like the third round was taken by a manager who was, I think, 2 or 3 levels higher than the people who took the first 2 rounds. So it was not very technical, although I did have one technical question about trees and that. But it was not very technical. It was more about engaging and trying to see what I was expecting from the internship. Some people had an HR round completely in the third round instead of technical. So that varies a bit.
Awesome, Raghu. So we have plenty of products from Microsoft, starting from Azure, starting on cloud and OS, databases, everything you have, right? So you did your internship there. On which product you worked, and what was your contribution to that product?
Surely, I'll tell the amount which does not get me into trouble. So, I worked on Microsoft Azure, their cloud platform. So, as a part of the Microsoft Azure, they offer a service called Data Lake Service. So, Data Lake is a concept. I'll give an example. Let's just say you're a company like Walmart. I don't know if Walmart is a client of theirs, but let's just say you're a company like Walmart and you want to scale up now. So you have so many stores already that you have a huge reserve of data, customer data. How does customer interact? So we want to be able to store that data and do some analytics on it. So you will hire a vendor like Microsoft Azure, who has a data lake service in which you'll basically dump all the data. Basically, you'll tell Microsoft that, hey, take my data, put it on your servers, and give me some way so that I can access it properly. So this becomes a very scalable option for most of the companies. So I work on this kind of server in which companies can actually dump huge amounts of data and still access this data in very quick time and to be able to do analytics on that. So I was working on the upgradation of these clusters.
That's really nice. So, on a scale of 10, how do you rate your internship experience? Because as a college student, you always have an expectation, right? And when you go for an internship, that expectation should match, right? So, how do you rate
Absolutely.
yourself the internship was? Can you rate and can you share your experience on that?
Absolutely. I think I would rate it a 6 on 10. And that's not because of Microsoft. That's firstly because of the virtual intern. I guess because we were the first batch who had to do a fully virtual intern, which might not happen with the subsequent batches ever again. So that was one thing which I personally do not like too much, because the whole idea of interning in a company is to be able to get into their ecosystem and network with people and see what you can get from there. Your peers, your colleagues matter way more than the language you learn there. So that is something I think I could not relish to the full extent I would have had I been on campus. And the second thing is that when you get the stipend, you realize that they cut your tax, which most of the companies do. So as a college student, you like those extra 5-10,000 rupees matter a lot to you. Although it does not, but that hits initially, which is something I know sounds very childish, but then initially that does feel a bit bad. Other than that, the internship was pretty nice. I got to learn a lot of things. I actually it was very hands-on, and you can for a company like Microsoft, you can actually get to know about all of the other teams as well. So I did a lot of other trainings in their platform. I actually did a cybersecurity module. I did a quantum computing module in their training platform. So that way, yes, it was very enriching.
Thanks, Raghav. So it's like you study for 18 years in your school and then 5 years in college. So after that, you get an offer, right? That too from a great company. So how did you feel when you receive an offer from Microsoft?
I mean, the feeling was beyond words. Did indeed feel very good, actually. I mean, it's actually hard to describe a feeling like that. More often than not, it feels like redemption, that all the things that finally you've got validation for all that you've done now and that you are on the right path. But then again, if you don't get, it's also a good feeling, but that now you know what you can improve, because you can always ask for feedback and everyone is happy to give you feedback because everyone wants to see you succeed.
That's really a good motivation to the people. So in this pandemic situation or in this COVID season, right? So there are many people who got the offers but got revoked, who got offered for internship. Their offers also got revoked. So for them, what would be your message on what particular topics you ask them to start working on that so that they could get a better job? What is your advice to your co students or juniors?
My first and foremost advice would be that this pandemic is like once in a century thing. So if anything goes wrong with respect to your career opportunities, especially if you're in the early stages of a career, I mean, you can just blame the pandemic. It's not you. It's the pandemic. It's not because of you. So you need not worry about that. And everyone understands that. From the whole industry point of view, from the HRs, everyone understands that if something negative happened to you because of the COVID thing, it was because of the COVID, not because of you. So now you can use this also as an opportunity to learn more, to equip yourself more with this for future opportunities. So the first thing I would just suggest a lot of people to do is to pick up competitive programming. So competitive programming is basic, or sport programming basically helps you to code fast and efficiently and able to think on your toes. So a lot of people actually sometimes become very slow while coding, or they feel very rusty. Like they have done courses, they know the concepts, but then they haven't solved so many problems so as to be able to implement them during interviews or during tests. So doing competitive programming is the first step. And then after you feel that you have a basic idea, like for example, I used to do competitive programming at Code Forces. So Code Forces was a website which I used with a lot of my friends. So it's first, another thing you should have is a good community. Try to get 3 or 4 friends of yours, or you can find friends online very easily who will want to do programming with you. So try to have those friends, and that idea of that competitive spirit will keep driving you throughout the whole process. Otherwise, it'll become very boring because you'll see the end result is 1 year or like 4 months down the line. So that becomes a bit boring. So to have those friends, to be able to do competitions with them online, it's very encouraging. It's very it's like a game. It becomes like a game almost. So in Code Forces, I would suggest that there's a Division 1 and Division 2. Division 2 being the lower ranked one. So in the Division 2, if you can solve a C problem, their problems are ranked ABC. If you can solve a problem C comfortably, that means you can crack almost all the companies. If you can solve a problem D occasionally, the fourth one, then you need not worry about anything. It's fully sorted for you. So after you feel that you've reached the level of solving problem C in Code Forces, then you can shift to Intervibit and Lead Code. So Intervibit and Lead Code parallelly, basically they twist competitive programming and make it more industry friendly. Now, competitive programming itself won't be asked in the interviews, but a version of that, a slightly changed version of the questions, will be asked in the interviews because that is what the companies generally require. So that is where Intervibit and Lead Code will give you an idea. And there you can actually go, especially on Intervibit, you can go and do company-wise questions. Like just select Microsoft and do the questions which are tagged Microsoft. Like code for 4 to 5 hours a day or 8 hours a day. It's okay. Take your time because this is pandemic. And frankly, career is more important than getting a slightly better grade in college because mostly you are expecting your grades to help you in career itself. So yeah, do that. Go for Intervibit, and then the rest will fall in place.
With respect to programming languages, do you recommend any languages like Java, Python to the students so they can focus that as well? And what are the subjects you refer? Because on a whole, when you go for an interview, they ask for database, they ask for OS, they ask for networks. So what are the other domains or they want to know?
Absolutely. So with respect to languages, I would say generally the companies either ask for C++ or Python. The companies are equally okay with C++, Python, and Java, actually. My personal favorite is C++ because I've been coding it a long time and I feel it's the fastest one. But then again, if you have a good command over even one of these 3 languages, then that should be enough. And actually, you should have good command over at least one. It's better to be good at one language than to be average at all 3. So try to focus on one particular language and code in that. That will make you proficient in that. But I would say that prefer C++ because irrespective of the platform and irrespective of the company, they will always have an option for C++. Or in tests and interviews. Sometimes some people tend to not know Java, some people tend to not know Python, but C++, most of the students will tend to know, most of the companies will have in the platform. With respect to concepts, mostly I've seen for internships, like I was part of the placement team, so I interact with a lot of seniors and a lot of batchmates to see what kind of questions come. So as I said, mostly they focus on OOPS concepts, the object-oriented programming. So interviews and actually a lot of MCQ questions and tests focus on OOPS, object-oriented programming. And after that, you have a bit of database programming, a bit of databases. They try to ask you concepts and how you go about it. That can depend on the company. Like Microsoft, sometimes they do go for that, but not occasionally. And OS concepts are not heavily hit upon in the internships. In placements, they do ask OS concepts, But for internship perspective, OS concepts are good to know, not essential. Essential, I believe, is OOPS, and so the priority order in my sense would be OOPS, then database, then networks, and then database, then OS, and then networks. Networks being the fourth one, because if you do know operating systems, you can actually learn networks after that. It's basically a stepping stone after that. So these are the concepts I would suggest that they should go about reading in that. Also, just one thing I forgot to mention, it's very important to be able to do complexity analysis. Complexity analysis is one of the very basics they expect you to learn during the initial years. But sometimes when you start programming again after some time, let's just say you haven't coded in 1 year, then you start preparing for interviews. Sometimes you don't stumble on a lot of questions for complexity analysis. So to be able to do complexity analysis and to be able to write code on paper, to be able to write some pseudo code on paper yourself without any support, without any autofill, is these two things becomes very essential during the interviews.
That's really awesome. So as we discussed, I'll share a sample resume of yours to the viewers in the description section so that they can take as a reference when they go for an interview. So by the way, when is your joining date with Microsoft?
I guess I'll have to ask the HR and get back to you on that one. It's not finalized yet, so I'll get back to you on that one. Yeah, but I hope anytime soon. But right now, as I said, my focus is to learn more things. So I'm going to be focusing on my project and to be able to learn more. And parallelly, I am doing competitive programming so as to make myself still employable, so that in case I need to explore more opportunities, I should be ready for that.
That's really great, Raghav. So thanks for your time. You spent almost half an hour with us. That is a valuable time to the people who watch this. So any short message or a brief message to the community?
So in a nutshell, cracking the internship or placement for any company should not be a dream. It's a normal goal. Do not hype it in your minds. Just have a simple task, simple plan in your mind. List down the topics you want to do. Try to find sources of how you want to achieve. Try to find a community, 3 to 4 people who will help you stay in touch. So after this half a month of trying to get the resources, you can get down to it and just start coding. It's as simple as that. Don't think about anything. Just keep coding, and you will get something. It's not an issue.
Thanks for that, Raghav. I really appreciate your present over here, and at the same time, to the viewers, I thank the YouTube channel Know Something and the Facebook channel I Love Trichy for giving this to the people. Many more audiences actually. So we have a few other topics to be covered in the consecutive weeks as well. So please subscribe our channel Know Something. And on behalf of the viewers, I again thank Raghav. Have a successful year with Microsoft, and thanks a lot, Raghav. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinod. Thank you everyone for listening. I hope it really helped you. Thank you, Vinod, for the initiative, and thanks Gokul for organizing this on the I Love Trichy page. Thank you.